Greenland, a vast, silent continent of ice. It's a place of extremes where nature reigns supreme. But look beneath its frozen surface and you'll find a history of explorers, empires, and incredible human endurance. For over 1,000 years, this remote island has stood at the crossroads of power and survival. This is the story of Greenland's forgotten rulers, its quiet conflicts, and the people who fought not for conquest, but simply to endure. Long before any European ship touched its shores, Greenland was not empty. It was home to resilient Arctic peoples. The ancestors of today's Greenlandic Inuit migrated across the frozen north thousands of years ago. Long before the pyramids of Egypt were built, they were masters of a world few could survive. They perfected the art of hunting in the extreme cold, navigating by stars across endless ice, and building communities in the harshest environment on Earth. Life was a constant battle, not against other people, but against nature itself. There were no kings, no empires, and no wars of conquest. There was only the daily struggle to live, a testament to human adaptation. Their world was one of balance and survival, a rhythm that had lasted for millennia. Then, around the year 985 AD, everything started to change. A Viking ship, captained by a man named Erik the Red, appeared on the horizon. Exiled from Iceland for manslaughter, Erik had sailed west in search of new land. What he found was a vast green coastline in the south, a stark contrast to the ice cap that covered most of the island. He called it Greenland, a clever marketing trick to attract settlers, and it worked. Soon, Norse families followed, establishing the first European settlements, the larger eastern settlement and the more remote western settlement. These Vikings didn't have a king ruling over them from Greenland itself. Instead, they were governed by local chieftains, powerful landowners who led their communities. Greenland was now part of the wider Norse world, a distant outpost connected by sea to Iceland, Norway, and beyond. Two very different cultures now shared this massive island, one indigenous and ancient, the other European and ambitious. The stage was set for a new chapter in Greenland's history. For nearly 500 years, the Norse Greenlanders carved out a life on the edge of the known world. They were farmers, raising livestock in the short summer months. They were hunters, seeking seals, walrus, and even polar bears. And they were traders. Their most valuable exports were walrus ivory, the northern gold, and the pelts of Arctic foxes, which were highly prized in Europe. They built stone churches and maintained a society that was distinctly European, yet uniquely adapted to the Arctic. But life was a constant struggle. The winters were brutal and seemed to be getting longer. Isolation was a constant threat. A ship lost at sea could mean a year or more without contact with Europe. And there was friction with the indigenous peoples whom the Norse sagas call the Skrælings. Archaeological evidence suggests some conflict, small-scale skirmishes between two groups competing for scarce resources. But their greatest enemy wasn't human, it was the climate. The Little Ice Age began to grip the North Atlantic, making farming impossible and sealing the sea lanes with ice. Sometime in the 1400s, the Norse settlements simply vanished. The last written record is of a wedding in 1408. After that, silence. Their disappearance remains one of history's great mysteries. As the Norse settlements faded, Greenland didn't just disappear from the map. It officially came under the authority of the Kingdom of Norway. Through a series of royal unions and political maneuvering in Scandinavia, control eventually passed from Norway to the powerful dual monarchy of Denmark-Norway. Greenland was claimed not through a great war or invasion, but through royal decrees and the control of trade monopolies. For centuries, however, this control was largely on paper. Denmark claimed Greenland, but its actual presence there was minimal to non-existent. The island returned to its isolation, inhabited solely by the Inuit, who thrived as the climate grew colder and the Europeans disappeared. It was a forgotten colony, a distant and icy possession of a faraway king. But this quiet period was not destined to last. The age of global empires was dawning, and Greenland would soon be pulled back into the European sphere of influence. In the early 18th century, Danish interest in Greenland was rekindled, driven by a mix of religious fervor and economic ambition. In 1721, a missionary named Hans Egede arrived, hoping to find the lost Norse settlers and convert them to Protestantism. He found no Norse, but he did find the Inuit, Egede stayed, establishing missions and trade posts and reasserting Danish sovereignty. This marked the true beginning of Greenland's colonial era. This wasn't a story of large-scale wars. The Inuit had no organized army to fight a European power. But it was an era of constant cultural conflict. Danish missionaries sought to change Inuit spiritual beliefs. Traders altered their traditional subsistence economy, and colonial administrators imposed new laws and systems of governance. Indigenous autonomy, which had been absolute for centuries, began to decline. The rule of Denmark reshaped every aspect of Greenlandic life, from religion and language to how people lived and worked. The power dynamic had shifted completely. Greenland was no longer a world apart. It was a colony ruled from Copenhagen. For nearly 200 years, Greenland remained a quiet, isolated Danish colony. But the outbreak of World War II shattered that isolation forever. In 1940, Nazi Germany invaded and occupied Denmark. Suddenly, Greenland was cut off from its colonial ruler. The United States, seeing the island's immense strategic value, stepped in. Under an agreement with the Free Danish ambassador in Washington, America took on the defense of Greenland. US forces built massive air bases, weather stations, and naval facilities across the island. The base at Thule in the high Arctic became a cornerstone of North American air defense. Greenland wasn't being conquered, it was being utilized. It had become a critical, unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Battle of the Atlantic, vital for hunting German U-boats and ferrying aircraft to Britain. The war transformed Greenland overnight, connecting it to the world in a way it had never been before and proving its new, modern strategic importance. After the war ended, Greenland was returned to Danish control, but things could never go back to the way they were. The wartime experience and the island's new geopolitical importance gave Greenlanders a greater sense of their own identity and a desire for more control over their own affairs. The push for autonomy began. This wasn't a fight with weapons, but a political struggle. A major milestone came in 1979 when Greenland was granted home rule, giving it its own parliament and control over internal matters like health, education, and the economy. The movement continued, and in 2009, Greenland achieved self-government, an even greater degree of autonomy. Today, the Kingdom of Denmark still handles foreign policy and national defense, but Greenland manages almost everything else. The conversation is no longer about colonial rule, but about the future. Debates over full independence continue as Greenlanders weigh the economic challenges against the powerful desire for complete sovereignty. Looking back, Greenland's story is unique. It was never truly shaped by massive armies or decisive battles. Its history was forged by endurance. It was shaped by the Inuit hunters who learned to thrive in the ice, by the Viking settlers who struggled against a changing climate, and by the modern Greenlanders who navigated the complex world of colonial powers to win self-rule. Greenland's history is not one of bloody conquest, but of quiet, resilient survival. In a world defined by war and domination, perhaps the greatest victory of all is simply to endure. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey through Greenland's history fascinating, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories from the forgotten corners of our world.